everyone. Thank you so much for joining us today. I'm Payton Johnson. I am the Youth Co-Creation Coordinator at Headstream Innovation. Right now, we are going to be talking a lot about mental health tech and youth innovation. And the entire purpose of this panel is to provide a multi-layered insight into the amazing potential of including youth voices in mental health and tech innovation. So with that, this panel is not about me, so we will be passing it on to our amazing panelists. So as I pass this down, please introduce yourself with your name, your current role or roles, and how you personally connect to the idea of co-creating technology or building with young people. So first up, we have Mumtaz.
Hi everyone, my name is Mumtaz. I'm part of the Headstream youth co-creative team. Basically, I'm one of the youth co-creators, so I get to help build great, amazing projects, and I get to work with great, amazing other youth co-creators. And well, I'm the youth, so I get to work with people on co-creating, but also give my opinion on building better and sustainable developments. So yeah.
Hi everyone, I'm Daniela Ivanir. I am the youth engagement lead at Half the Story. We are the first youth-led nonprofit on a mission to improve the next generation's relationship to technology. And co-creation to me, I guess, is just the only way that you can create anything that impacts a community itself is with those community members and people like Mumtaz, who I actually have worked with quite closely in my role at Half the Story. So it's awesome to see Mumtaz here. Thanks.
Hello, everyone. My name is Chulkendi Valdez. I'm the co-founder of Healers Health. We're a technology company helping young people get connected and enrolled into life-changing opportunities. So think the 80% non-clinical that really affects outcomes around mental health. So we're thinking, how do we better connect young people to arts programs, sports programs, basic needs to get around housing, food, job attainment, job training, cool apprenticeship programs, and removing the labor. So just like it's easy to book a restaurant, a reservation like we're doing today, or booking our flight, how can we use AI to remove the labor of applying and enrolling into these cool programs and resources? And how co-creation is important to me is that we want to actually build a platform that is co-designed by youth and not retrofitted by adults, where they really are in the driving seat. So I benefit by being in the rooms with young people, and really excited to getting your feedback today as well for those that are in the Youth Co-Creator Club or have done some advising with Headstream.
Thank you all for your wonderful introductions. Moving on, we're going to go to Mumtaz first. I want to ask you, what would you want every person in this room tonight to understand about what young people actually need from mental health technology?
One of the things that youth are actually looking into right now is not going onto social media or going into apps or going onto technology that is based on engagement, but based on actually people being able to connect and people being able to get something from it. I think we're kind of tired of the Instagrams and the TikToks and like technology that is about like data, but we actually want connection. So when people are building mental health technology, we want to be able to connect, but we also want technology that focuses on being able to not only connect us to other youth, but also being able to connect us with better things to help our mental health. I feel like a lot of times when people are building mental health technology, it's about how much data that they can get to see that they're, oh, this is, how many people are improving from using our app, but not really focusing on what like the youth are getting from it.
Thank you. Thank you for sharing that insight about youth and mental health. In the same vein, so when we see how youth want to engage with digital spaces, Daniela, through your work at Half the Story, what shift are you seeing in how young people want to show up in these spaces and how they currently are?
So the first word that comes to me is probably just agency. I think Mumtaz, you just kind of touched upon this, but I think that just yesterday I was at the Today Show with three young people, and they were talking about a new report that came out on Snapchat. And one of the things that they were talking about is just a genuine frustration in seeing stuff that they did not ask for. we were looking at Snapchat spotlights. This is something that is like a newer feature on Snapchat. And it's like they were scrolling through, and I was just actively seeing their reactions to it. And they were just extremely disturbed by just kind of like the over sexualized content. A lot of things were just things that they didn't seek out. And so I think that there's this overall feeling of like young people are finding ways, as Mumtaz just said, to be connective, to find inspiration, but they also are trying to make work what currently exists. So I think for the most part, what I'm seeing the shift to be is like when we tell young people that there could be a future where they're using platforms in a way that actually serves them, um, they are getting excited about that, and it's an opportunity for us to build things that meet them where they are. And so yeah, generally I would say there's just like a real want and need for agency and control.
Absolutely. I hear that a lot with youth needing agency, and that's so true with like not seeing what we need to be seeing. So in that vein, Yul Kendi, what has co-creating with youth unlocked for you that you couldn't have gotten any other way?
Yeah, before I get into that, I want to talk about an important prerequisite that I think is important. And as someone that used to do diversity consulting and do a lot of unconscious bias training, I always say the first step to designing for more equity and inclusivity, you got to check yourself. So I had to go into a vulnerable place where I had to tap into my younger self and really take me back to those moments and my own experiences related to mental health. I was born in the Dominican Republic. I moved to this country at the age 10 to 11 to St. Louis, Missouri, where there are not a lot of Dominicans. And I've never got diagnosed with anxiety, but I remember clearly sitting on my pink puffy chair as a high schooler, already understanding I've gotten a full scholarship to come to Massachusetts. But I'm sitting there thinking, who's gonna do my hair? My mom, when I go to the school, and thinking of all those little things that are scary when you're transitioning into adulthood, and those little moments leading to full-blown panic attacks where I didn't know what to do. And I always say I've done as a teen and even as adult what drove me to this work, my many walk of shames to the ER, because that's where I thought I can find support, someone to fix me. And so when I look now at myself, I have to ask, you're hearing, oh, therapy, you have to do therapy is the only way, or medication. But when I think through when that happened to me years later, after frankly burning out from my first company, I ended up in the ER in Brooklyn shortly after the pandemic. And my body was in shock for months. I couldn't move. I never felt so powerless. And the only thing that cured me is actually getting back into community, connected support. So even though the ecosystem is saying, this is how you get fixed, my own experience told me how I got support was by showing up to my improv group or my peer writing group. And as a queer woman, finding those spaces that I belong and figuring that out, not in isolation, but with other people. So now when I talk to young people, it starts with my own community, my younger cousins and my siblings. And I think even though there's a lot where we relate, my siblings are also immigrants. My cousins, many of them are queer, but also understanding I got the benefit to hide. I didn't always have to show up. And for them, it might be even more vulnerable. So me telling them what worked for me, it's not gonna work. So they've been keeping me humble. For example, my little cousin, she's finishing community college, also balancing part-time retail, and I'm sending her all these cool programs that I know I used to do that. I used to apply to 20 programs. She's like, Tata, I'm cansada. Like, I'm tired. I am balancing two jobs. I'm being told I need to do this at school. I need to send money back home. So those are the things where I had to be really empathetic and understand her experience is completely different than mine. And then we took that level of co-design and just listening to other communities. So what's been helpful to us over the last 2 years, partnering with organizations like Jobs First, New York City, which is a workforce development convener. And every year they bring about 200 youth from New York City public schools to one annual convening. And I remember the first time they brought me on as an MC. And my background, I come from Google, where I was driving and supporting a lot of companies around AI. And I wanted to help educate the young people in the room. And I love it. We did like a Subway hot take where I brought them to have their own controversial takes around AI. And then young people lined up right away, like not afraid to get the mic. Back to back, they're like, I know everybody thinks we love this technology. We're tired of being on our phones. I hate AI. And they were not afraid. They were super bold. And that's the space where we really took a turn to learn from them what it means and how they're engaging with this technology. And what we found as the pattern is that young people actually want more technology that helps them get back into their community, in their screens, in nature. But again, that's something that just by reading at a data and a report, if you don't give young people the mic to actually tell you, we would have never learned those and heard those lessons along the way that would affect the way we're building out our product design.
Okay, thank you so much. I think that that's really true. Leading with empathy, leading with listening to our youth is super duper important when we're thinking about crafting products for youth. So in that same vein, Mumtaz, youth are the most marketed to generation at this point, right? So when we're thinking about that, how does a mental health product actually earn youth trust instead of just their engagement?
I'd say going back to the main theme of this conversation is actually having the community that comes with it. I think any app, I don't know if you guys remember like Be Real or like those like apps that come out that are super popular for 6 months. People get engaged by it, and then a year later, everyone's like, oh, you still have that? I feel like for a lot of mental health apps, it is literally one of those things. It is one of those ways where people will like download the Finch or like, oh, I'm gonna do this every single day, and it never gets done. And that's because there is no community behind it. It's literally just a teen trying to like do it themselves. And even with a lot of like the meditation apps, there's really nothing there for them because it's like, oh, I can't go in person and do this, or I can't find my community to do this, or I can't go on Zoom and do this. Because a lot of people forget that that's one of the biggest ways that people actually stay engaged, not actually just like download it for 2 weeks and then get rid of it.
It's a really good answer. Everybody needs community, right? But in the same vein of like listening to youth and listening to what you've just said, Daniela, when we think about a future of youth advocacy, what does it look like when youth advocacy has successfully shaped the mental health tech industry at a large scale?
Awesome, thank you. I loved that answer, Mumtaz. I think that when we think about youth power, something that I think is really important to kind of focus on is this concept of sacrifice of power in order to actually create something that not only is consulted or advised by young people, but actually shaped by the community that you are trying to serve. There just is a sacrifice of what your board looks like. So I see so many tech companies or new startups have teen advisory boards. We as a nonprofit have one too. It's a wonderful way to co-create. That said, like I want to see more tech companies have teenagers on their actual board. Like I want to see, for me, youth advocacy being successful would be that we have like a true integration of youth voice and language into the products that they're using. So as Mumtaz said, there are particular things that draw young people into these products, and those are things like community, things like humor and inspiration that would only come from their own voice. So to me, it's like a true shift in the way that we are creating things where if we are going to market to kids under the age of 18, I just read today that Snapchat and Meta, in a recent report, had been getting youth ambassadors in high schools to actually be marketing and getting swag and promoting Snapchat and Meta in their schools. Or they were getting notifications that were literally saying like, join this group to see your class, you know, your graduating class. Like these companies are actively creating their business model around the needs and wants of teenagers. and teenagers are not actively shaping them. So I would say like a true shift and like handing over of power would be like where I would think we're in a successful spot.
I love that response. I love that a lot. That's so true. So then more specifically, when we talk about preventative mental health care, what does that look like when youth are driving the vision for preventative mental health care, Yulkendi?
Yes, that's a great question for us. Another anchor home has been Atlas High School and here in Long Island. They're actually the largest public schools for immigrant students, and they were formerly called newcomers back in 1995, taking me back when I was born. But the students themselves fought to rename it to Atlas because they wanted to be known not just as new immigrants, more of what they bring. And it's been exciting over the last 2 years to work in Atlas. And one of my favorite memories, we did a panel similar like this to a student, but we had a super cool interpreted healer named Diosa from the Bronx who was able to help us run the training both in Spanish and English. And then we have my co-founder translating Arabic. And it was a similar room like this where you look at it and it would be the students that you think are super disconnected and disengaged because they're talking and they're huddled, they're trying to be cool, be with their friends. But we met them where we are. We started in English and I was able to switch in Spanish, and you can see how that feeling like, left for them to put their head up like, wow, these are people that look like me. So I think creating those spaces of belonging are very key to preventive health, because the reason that we're still seeing 1 in 2 young people not getting the care they need is because at the end of that spectrum, the people that are giving the care are not, they don't think it looks like them, or that they would ever understand their background, whether the language and their culture. So that's something that we found important. And then to your point, Montaz, we at the beginning, actually, we were doing these meditation workshops live. We were in class with our students teaching breath work, and it's cool, techniques we all do every day, but they were like, this is great talking about mental health, but my family's living paycheck to paycheck. I need a job, or I need to make money now, or I'm thinking about legal support because I see my parents at home, they seem very stressed and I want to help. So that shifted our direction to think through, if we want to help young people thrive, the reality is that those that still have those financial needs experience having more sense of hope and more ability to actually take in these things that are good for your wellness, unless you meet them where they are first. So we started with connecting them more to jobs, internships, different programs, jiu-jitsu, taking to the park. And then from there, they have more wiggle room and space to try other mental well-being techniques. So I think that's how we go into preventative health. We don't want to get to that point of crisis to 9 months later, oh, I wonder why they're not showing up to meet with their social worker or their therapist. Well, it's because they don't feel like they belong. We're not speaking in their language, or we're not giving them agency to pick the modality that's good for them. Some people prefer the arts to heal, or I know earlier, Payton, you might want to talk more about it. Like sports is something that you like, basketball, even the difference of being in a sports team, how that affects our trajectory versus feeling isolated and not feeling like we can participate in those spaces.
Thank you. That's so true. I think we learned a lot about centering community and making sure we center understanding when it comes to including youth and making sure that we stop a crisis before it happens. So in the interest of getting you all dinner, we're going to move on to our kind of rapid close. So if you can just finish the sentence, the future of mental health is, and then blank, let me know.
The future of mental health is youth-backed and youth built mental health technology, but also mental health support.
Love that.
To me, the future of mental health is human. I think that right now we're in a moment where preserving humanity is up for debate, and we're seeing so many exciting and also confusing new like innovations around what it means to provide care for young people and for people in general. And to me, I just think it's very important to continue having these practices of in-person community, of human-to-human support, of peer support.
Yes, the future of mental health goes beyond our screens, and it means going back into our community, into nature, the basics of truly being human.
Thank you all. We heard a lot about the importance of centering community. I think it's really important to make sure that everybody's connected to each other when we're thinking about youth mental health. We also heard a lot about the importance of empathy, of listening, of truly trying to understand somebody's cultural background, where they're coming from, because how they receive something might be different. And then also like truly listening to youth. I think is a really big thing, not just assuming that we know what they're going to talk about. So thank you guys for listening to us. The panelists will be around. I'll also be around. I head up there, or I coordinate Headstream's youth collective and the youth Headstream house, which is the youth content creation collective. So if you want to learn a little bit more about that, please come see me and then talk to any of our amazing panelists. We can take like one question from the audience. Is there a question for any of our panelists?
Hi, thank you guys for taking the time to speak with us. I'm curious, so I know we talked about, like you especially talked about like how we need to be more human and mental health needs to be more human, and I agree with that. But I think there's also a question of accessibility. So, for example, I know that a lot of people are relying on AI chatbots as therapists, and obviously that's not ideal. But at the same time, it's like therapy is expensive, and I could understand people saying like, oh, well, I can't afford to pay $250 for a therapist, therefore I'm going to talk to this chatbot who's free. So it's like, I'm curious how you all think about like, yes, like there is an over-reliance on AI and technology, but at the same time, the root cause of that is accessibility. So how do you, I know no one can solve that, but like offhand, but curious how you guys think about it.
That's an awesome question. So my background is actually in peer support. When I was 15 years old, I started volunteering for a crisis suicide hotline that was run for teenagers by teenagers. And it was anonymous. It was accessible. All you had to do was have a phone and be able to call something. There was also text and email. So when I hear these stats about an over-reliance of or just a reliance in general of students using generative AI for support, I guess it just doesn't surprise me at all. We have known for a long time that anonymity, accessibility, and like lowered stigma is critical for young people to access any support of some sort of like first bridge into asking for help. So to answer your question, I think in the first level of it, I think we have a general understanding that it makes sense that this is happening. Secondly, I think the question maybe is less like, should young people use technology or generative AI at all for this use? I think it's more just where is the line, right? And I think it's a question we're having with AI in general right now. What are the things that must be done and continue to be done by human beings? And I think for me, the way that I'm thinking about, I would love to see a world where these chatbots actually become like kind of a triage intake into resources that then actually can help younger people on a deeper level. So I just think right now we don't have the responsibility of these platforms to ensure that what young people are saying are going to turn into some sort of resource or like intake. At the moment, none of that exists. So to me, in an ideal world, we kind of are using some of that like need and interest to then increase, one, the accessible resources that we have, and then two, actually connect that initial help-seeking behavior into real like opportunities for healing that we can have. I don't know if anyone else wants to.
Well, that was a good pitch for us. That's what we're creating.
Sure.
And a lot of the resources it's 1 billion in resources, and even like if you look at New York City alone, still go underutilized, that come with free therapy, free programs. The reality is just hard. Like a lot of it leaves on flyers, newsletters, and if you don't know, you don't know, and then if you know it, you have to apply for the deadline, figure out if it's a wait list. Or so the more as individuals here, what I would love for all of us to do is share a resource. Like the basics make a difference. A lot of the research still says having a mentor is what actually shapes a lot of your mental health. So even taking up a phone call, a mentorship phone call with a young person, going as far to then become a sponsor to them and nominate them for opportunities. That's a mental health intervention. We should frame that as well. Or taking time to help them apply for a job training, an apprenticeship, helping them fill out the application. That's helping a young person's mental health because we're creating exposure community that way. And there's a lot of free resources out there. We just have to help young people navigate, and a lot of them already self-navigate, and I've taken this agency. So it's exciting, and a lot of organizations out there are mapping out these resources, and we all know resources in here that can help a young person's life, and it's all about communicating that and helping a young person get there, and that's the future that I'm excited about.
Mumtaz, anything to add?
Honestly, I agree with you so much, because the issue that we're currently having right now for like teenagers and youth is that it's very gatekeepy in the world that we live in. It's hard to find things when it's hidden behind a wall. It's hard to get access to resources when the resources are available, but they aren't available to you. And just exactly what you said, I think it's more of like, the question really should be is like, how can we make sure that these resources are accessible? Not really like, are we having this reliance on chatbots? I think most people wouldn't want to talk to ChatGPT at 2 a.m. about their problems. They'd rather have someone else that they could talk to. They'd rather be able to call a therapist at 9 a.m. in the morning and say, hey, when can I come in? I think that's what's more desirable in this world. But it's really on how can we make these sources available for everyone to use without it being behind a wall. So yeah.
I think that's a great question to leave us all thinking about, because I know AI is very much on the mind. I want to thank you for that question. I think it was really timely. And then thank all of you guys for listening to us and bearing with some tech issues. I know that it was rough, but thank you. If you have any more questions, our panelists will be around. Thank you so much for listening.